Hello, everyone. This is Marcellin, and it is my good pleasure right now to be chatting with EPA BIZIMANA. He is a software engineering manager based in the United States of America, and he also happens to be my brother. We want to focus on his career trajectory. We want this conversation to be something that can be inspiring to young people, to Africans, to people who are trying to climb the ladder. EPA, thank you very much for responding to the call.
You're very welcome. I am very happy to be here.
All right, so I just said you are a software engineering manager. What the heck does that mean?
So basically, there are two types of software engineering managers. On one hand, you have managers who are really responsible for the administration stuff. These are people who are responsible for conducting one-on-ones with the people who report to them. These are the people who are responsible for giving raises to the people who report to them. And then there is, on the other side, you can have managers who are also involved in the technical, the day-to-day technical operations. So part of my job, I design software, I write code, but then I also have those people who report to me that we do discuss, every day sometimes, every other week, basically to talk about their career aspirations, what they're doing, how they can improve, and stuff like that. So in a nutshell, that's really what I do.
All right, so by training, you are a computer engineer or software engineer, but on the top of that, you have the management duties as well. That's excellent. So you just said something about writing a code or developing software. I'm sure a lot of people now know what that means because the world is just going that route. But can you briefly just explain, just for the sake of anyone who will be listening who doesn't maybe understand the lingo, what does it mean to write a code or to design a software? Or can you just give maybe an example?
So what writing code is basically writing a language that computers can understand so that the computers can respond to the actions of a user. It is a whole, it's a very long process. Usually before you start writing code, you need to understand what the user is looking for. And then after that, there is obviously a lot of back and forth to make sure that what you end up developing is actually what the user is looking for. So that's really what it is, writing code so that machines can understand exactly what user is trying to do. And by machines, it's computers. We're talking about phones. Right now, you can talk about robots, basically anything that, anything that can respond to a user's input, basically.
Right. I remember a long time ago during my undergraduate years, I took a class, maybe a couple of classes that involved coding. It was fun. It was exciting. I thought I really was going to like it. So, the first two introductory classes were really nice. I was really good. But the moment it started getting really complicated, I developed a very big headache. And then I decided that math was probably and engineering were probably the best things for me. So I salute you, man. I salute you.
Well, it's funny you say that because when I went to college, I initially went there for electrical engineering. I wanted to be like you. I wanted to be like our uncle was an electrical engineer. And growing up, I feel like I was always trying to be like somebody who's ahead of me, right? So I went in and then, I took this hardware class. I did not enjoy it. And then out of just curiosity, I saw this other programming class. I took it and then I was like, oh my goodness, this is making so much sense. So let me go ahead and do it. So I went that route. And then I remember not everybody was on board with me doing computer science. You being one of them.
Right.
Basically, you're saying, hey, if you go to computer science, you're only looking at software. it would be better if you went into something like computer engineering, where basically you have both software and and hardware. So 15, 16 years later, I'm looking at it now, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really did make the right choice, and I'm glad that I did not listen to you guys.
So,
oh yeah.
Now, let me I was going to ask you this question later, but since we are talking about it, let's just talk about it. So when you started taking computer science as your major in university, did you have an insight into the future? Like, did you know that actually this is where the world was going, or you were just being like, hey, I enjoy it, let me just go for it, whatever happens, happens?
So when we arrived here in America, this was back in 1999, I went to a grocery store with our uncle. And so when it was time to pay, I saw him, take a credit card, insert into this, box. And then I was the one who was pushing the cart. And then, he walked away. So I stayed behind. And then he said, Epa, hey, let's go. Right. So I said, no, you did not pay. So he looked at me and said, when you use this card and then you put it in there, it actually takes money from your account and then it puts it to the account of the company. So at that moment, I said to myself, I want to know how to do this. I want to learn whatever people need to learn to be able to do that. So it's actually funny because when I started, going to school in Akron, other than knowing that, I'm going to be able to move money from a card to a bank account, I really did not know much more about what computer science is and what's going to entail. So I remember the first project that we have, which we call, Hello World projects. I look at them, I do them, I get A's, but then I'm like, I have no idea what I just did, but it makes sense to me. This is what the professor wants. So let me just go ahead and do it. So I just continued that trajectory. And then it was not until I had my internship that things really started to come together.
That's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about your background, which is pretty much like mine, but I'm sure there are several variations. You were still in primary school when we left Rwanda, correct?
Yep.
From Congo
went to Kenya after
from Congo, 4 months later, we went to Kenya. But I want you to relate this incident that happened in Congo. I wasn't there because I left for Kenya before you, but the place where you guys were living, where we left you, the soldiers came and ransacked the whole place, and you ended up going to the camp. So can you talk a little bit about that?
The soldiers came in. Our second youngest brother, he was barely, a few weeks, if that, old. So basically they came in, and if I remember the details correctly, somebody, was holding a knife, I think to my mom's neck or something like that. And then they robbed pretty much everything that was in there, even things that you would not expect somebody to rob, crates. There was a thermos that had porridge in there, they took that. And I think, one of them came and they wanted to grab the mattress, and then they saw our little brother, and then, he started crying, and then they said, oh my goodness, no, there's a baby. So at least they did have that in them to feel sorry for a little kid. But, at the end of the day, they left pretty much with everything else. And thank God nobody was hurt and nobody was injured. So
right. I always think about that incident. Imagine a society that has been corrupt to the core, to such a level that soldiers, right, who are
supposed to protect you,
protect people, they are actually the ones who are coming to do the robbing. And not only that, they are robbing refugees. You know what I mean?
Now remember, they had the right to do that. Basically, they had the permission to do that. If the government says, hey, we're not going to pay you, so it's on you to figure out how you're going to survive, how you're going to live, how you're going to feed your families. There's a story. So there's a time, me and a couple other people, we went to Lake Kivu, went to get water. And then on our way back, we met these three soldiers. They pointed a gun at us. So I was, maybe what, I don't know, 10 years old. So they called me, and then they basically searched my pockets inside and out. And then they found me with nothing. Basically they found out that I did not have anything. So they basically chased me away. And then they stayed behind with those other gentlemen. And then about 2 hours later, they showed up. And I think one of them had like 6,000 francs, which at that time, 6,000 Rwandan francs, because the Zairian currency was dropping, right? So basically they took everything. Now, starting that moment, I was scared of the police. I was scared of the soldiers. I'll be seated here, and I know you remember this. The moment I see like a police or just a soldier just walking by, oh my goodness, I would run. I mean, like that trauma, it was real.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I also remember that actually that trauma stayed with you for quite a long time, because even when we got to the US, every time you saw a policeman just passing by, you just go back to the house and hide.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So sometimes I'll be driving and then I see a cop behind me, right? I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not speeding. But the fact that they're behind me, I'm like, oh my goodness. So if I'm like on a highway, I'll take an exit. So there's a time I did exactly, I did just that. I took an exit, and then the cop took exactly the same exit. I turned around, he followed me for like a good 5 minutes. And then I ended up taking exactly the same exit, because basically I went around and then I just kept driving, and then he went a different way. Now, I don't know if I still have that right now, but it was traumatic.
Yeah, actually, I just remember that the very first time I got arrested by the police, we were together. You were about to run. I'm like, hey, you can't run, man. I mean, like,
oh man. And then I think by the time you finally stopped, there were maybe like 2 or 3 cop cars. So apparently, they were, behind us for a long time, I guess.
Yeah, because I didn't know, because I saw them behind me with the lights on and everything. Then I was like, who are they going to arrest? As soon as I start, woo, 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 and then in front of me, I'm like, and the whole time we had been speeding. And so you gotta understand, we are coming from Kenya, and all of a sudden, actually, when I was chatting with our sister, Dr. Albin, a few days ago, it helps to be a psychologist. She really helped me to understand what actually was going on, because I was like, hey, I was just being reckless. She was like, no, you had been living a life of really having nothing, very limited options, trauma, fear, am I going to make it? And all of a sudden, all of those things are removed. There's an immense amount of freedom that comes about, and you just don't even know what to do with it. And I mean, I never knew that I was going to own a car. I mean, so all of these things are happening. You have no idea even like how to behave. And speeding was just part of experiencing this newfound freedom, which we didn't even know how to do with it. And thankfully, the police was there to remind us, hey, look, this is a country.
Oh, yeah. When you are in a certain situation, it's going to adapt to where you are. And then once you move from that environment to another, I'm sure, obviously, I'm not a psychologist, but there has to be that state of confusion, like, all right, what do I do? Do I do what I used to do? Do I need to learn, how to behave in this new environment? But, eventually, we do adapt, which I think it's one of the things that humans have. I think you can put a human in any environment, and eventually they're going to adapt.
Exactly. So, Rwanda and Kenya. So we talked a little bit about Congo. Rwanda and Kenya. Do you have any standing memories that you?
Yeah. So let me see. In Rwanda, so I do remember quite a bit, a lot of it actually, if not all of it. We were blessed to come from a family that, we had a mom and dad who were there. They loved us. They worked, really hard for us. To this day, I always say that if I ever become, a half of a hard worker, that dad is, I'll probably be the second most hardworking person in the world. So that piece was there. You know, when you're a child, at least, you know, what they used to teach us in Kenya is, you know, there are three things that you need from your parents, right? You know, housing, clothing, and shelter. Those ones we never, you know, suffered. The other aspect is spiritually. I think our parents did a good job to make sure that God was always, you know, in our mind. Even when we did something, even today, even when you do something and you know that, you know, it's not something that's good, you always have that little voice in your head, basically saying, hey, you know, we need to do the right thing, we need to do the right thing. So I think that was good. The piece that, for me personally, was very difficult to deal with in Rwanda was the mental side of things, you know. So you know, you have, you know, the body, it was fine. You have the spirit, you know, it was fine. On the mental side of things, I feel like that's where things did not go well for me anyway. So here I come, I'm born, and I'm the second born to Marcellin. Marcellin was a big shot. Everybody, you know, had this affinity for you, you know, this smart kid, which, by the way, I believe you are cognitively, I believe you are gifted. Yeah, you know, seriously, just like looking back, I can be like, you know what, this guy is gifted, you know, right? For me, I was not as gifted as you were. So when I grew up, I remember wanting to be like you. I remember wanting to do everything that you did, whether it's good or bad, because I feel like I failed at demanding the attention that I wanted.
Right.
I felt like if I do not follow your footsteps and basically try to be like you or do exactly what you're doing, I'm not going to get that attention, you know, the attention that I wanted. So I am the first middle child of a family. So apparently, you know, some of the things that they said, you know, about middle kids, maybe it's true. But I did feel like I did fail at basically carving out that space for me, for people to look at me for who I am and not try to look at me in reference to who you are. So, and it was not just at home, you know, like in a nuclear family. I felt like if you extend out, even to our uncles and aunts, I felt like they created this box and said, yeah, EPA is in this box, closed it, threw the door away. And no matter what, there's no way, at least I feel, there's no way I was going to be able to change some of the things that they thought about me. I remember, you know, when we were in school, you know, if you go back, right? If you go back to Africa and they ask all my peers in school and ask all the teachers, hey, how is EPA at school? They'll tell you that EPA is a disciplined kid, EPA is a smart kid. And then I come home, hey, what is EPA? EPA is not so smart. Why was that? It's because they're comparing me to you. That actually, it made me feel a certain way. I did not really know how to process it. It's just that now, you know, after I grew up and started having kids and stuff like that, I started to look back and kind of looked at, you know, my life and, you know, why things happen and stuff like that. And I just tried, you know, to start to make sense of it. So I was really living between those two realities. One reality at school, where teachers and students, they know that EPA is a smart kid, but then you come home, EPA is not so smart.
So you were maybe expected to be the way I was, or better. And not only that, so I was academically gifted, and somehow was a very extrovert. So yeah, so that definitely created problems. And it's always a mistake to try to, you know, compare, because the other thing is people, they bloom differently.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. You know, my oldest is also gifted, And I remember, like sometimes I have to remind myself because I almost fall into that trap of expecting, expecting my other kids basically to be like, him, right? So I have to remind myself like, hey, people develop differently.
Right.
Now something that was really interesting in my case when I was younger, um, there are times when I'll be like number one. So I remember there's a time I was in third grade, and I think I came in at number 17. I was beaten pretty badly, and then the following quarter, I came in number one. Now, something a boy wants, a growing boy, the number one person you want to please and get approval from is, your dad, you're basically the males in your family, right?
Right.
Um, I'm not gonna forget this, I would do good, but then there is a saying that they say, "Nta mutwe ushimwa kabiri," basically meaning that, hey, today you did this, it's good, but tomorrow you're gonna fall again, right?
Right.
So
Right.
like I really did not. It was really hard for me to comprehend that because even when we went to Kenya, except for maybe one or two terms where I came in at like number 12, I believe, I used to be in the top 5 of my class. But then I come home, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm not smart here, so I'm only smart there. Now, what I ended up finding out is that anytime I was with people or in an environment where people know, say that I'm smart or people expect me to excel, I actually excel. And then anytime I was in an environment where I'm expected to fail, even the smallest success was seen as a fluke, right? So like throughout my whole teenage years and early adulthood, those are two things that I failed to understand.
So actually, let me ask you a question. When did you actually know that you didn't have to be like your big brother, that you were actually a man in your own right? Like, when did you come to peace with knowing that, you know what, I'm me, I don't have to be like anybody else?
So when we were in Kenya, obviously, there was that basically, still living, in between those two worlds. And then we came to America. I started here in high school as a sophomore. So my sophomore year, in my junior year, they were difficult. They were challenging for me. They really were. I'm here. I'm at that age where you want to feel that sense of belonging. You want to create friends. Anytime you have a problem, in class, you want to be able to go and ask somebody without, any fear of judgment or something like that. So that did not happen. Now, when I went, I eventually decided to go into the football, basically to play football in high school. So I joined the team, and then my senior year, some of the things that used to be challenging, as a sophomore or as a junior, it's like something just flipped. For example, I struggled in math my first couple of years. Now, as a sophomore, I took geometry, which I never liked geometry. And then as a junior, that's when we started to get into trigonometry. And then as a senior, we continued to trigonometry. And that's where I felt like I'm actually myself. I had started to tutor other students. So basically, people are coming to me and say, "Epa, I saw that you got an A here. Can you help me understand how you did this?" Our teacher, Mrs. Ford, she would ask some questions, and then while people are scratching their head, for me, like answers just, start coming like that. I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is actually clicking. And then I go to college. I went to college. The very first, class I took, this was in Akron. Things are just, coming just like that. I'm like, oh my goodness. So when we came to college, when we came to America here, and then, I think you're supposed to graduate in, I do not know why year, but then I do not know how long it took you and some of the, the challenges, you started having with that and stuff like that. At that point, I was like, you know what, this is going to be my chance to, to climb again, right? So it's really painful to say, because, you should not be happy when, somebody, like your blood, somebody is having some issues. But since I had been longing for that attention and that approval and that, for so long, I would tell on you so that you can get in trouble. And then deep inside, I'm like, okay, good. Now, they can
Finally,
look at me
I'm gonna get my attention.
Exactly, I'm gonna get my attention. Now, sometimes, it was short-lived. You always found a way to climb up top again. Back in 2004, I came across this lady, and we had a conversation, and basically, she was very instrumental in instilling a lot of confidence in me, in basically making me understand that despite how people look at you, at the end of the day, you really are your own person.
Right.
At the end of the day, you have to follow your passion. At the end of the day, you have to know. You have to know what you want, right? So I think at that time in 2004, that's when I felt like, you know what, I'm not gonna care about how people see me. I'm just gonna go ahead and do what I need to do. I feel like the first time in my life I made that proud is when I graduated.
I have to say this. I remember as when all these problems were happening, and then of course I'm kind of like living in a different world, and and you are like getting Dad's approval, and finally you are receiving all the it's like there was a switch. I mean now you are in ahead, and then I hear you are graduating, you are getting this professional job, and I'm struggling. It's like for the first time I'm like, okay, this guy now is clearly ahead of me for sure. Now it's not like now it's not even there is no question about it. But I really I felt so happy for you, because I was like, because at that time I was feeling like I have arrived somewhere. I don't know where my future holds, but I am at peace. I'm kind of like finding myself. Like my identity had been always tied with my performance. My identity had always been tied with who I was as a favorite son, as a smart kid, as gifted kid, as blah blah blah, and then all of that fall.
Yeah.
All at once.
Yeah.
Then I had to find a new identity. So it got to a point where I found my identity. I had to accept myself as someone who is worthy, even without anybody's approval. So basically, I had to graduate, because all of that praise, believe it or not, it was killing me as well. It was damaging me, because now I was living to please. Now my worth was not tied with who I was, but with who I pretended to be. My worth was tied with my acceptance. So my worth was tied with being that guy. So for me to lose all of that was God's blessing, because God helped me to see the corruption that was really within me. Because at a certain point, I knew that I was inwardly corrupt. I wasn't like in school, I was failing. Not because I was.
You're not putting in any effort. You didn't care.
Effort, no discipline. Like everything was a mess. But I kept wearing this aura of everything is okay. But you can only lie
Yeah.
So long. And then
For
he
so long.
fell down. When he fell down, I was discovered as a fraud, the fraud that I was. So I had to deal with that. I had to really go before God and rediscover who I am, who I'm supposed to be, to know what my flaws are, to expose my my phoniness,
Yeah.
to know
Become clean.
this is what I have to deal with. So when you were climbing up, I was actually very happy for you. I was like, man, finally this guy is getting what he is getting the recognition that I have been stealing from him the whole time. I was
For
like,
decades.
when I get bashed and talk, everything that they say, they're not lying. I'm a fraud. I did this, I did that. All of that is true, and I deserve it. I accepted it, and I was like, let me find out who I am. Let me see what I can do now. How can I move? How can I move from where I am? And so that's really where I kind of like reinvented myself and like started from scratch. So now I remember one time I go to there's a conference. I'll never forget that. It was in Nashville, Tennessee. I go there, and then this old lady comes to me. I even remember the date. It was in 2007, July the 7th, 777. This old lady comes to me during the conference and he said, "Hey, I feel like I want to pray for you." I'm like, "Okay." And then she says, "I feel like God is telling me, don't ever compare yourself to your brother or your uncle. Don't ever feel jealous of their success, because what God has for you is very different. It is a totally different path that He has for you. Follow it, seek Him, and don't even worry about anything else. Keep your eyes
Wow.
on the
Out
prize."
of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, this old lady, I didn't know her and everything, but when she said it, I mean, remember, it's 777. At that time, you were really like doing well. You're doing this job, co-ops.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
like living the life, you know?
Trying.
Right.
Yeah.
So that really, that, and then and another incident happened, and then I felt again the Holy Spirit telling me the whole thing. What I have for you is like you can't even imagine what I have for you. Stay humble,
Amen.
accept it, whatever it is. Just walk your way, small steps, step by step. So, yeah, that's how I kind of like came to reconcile with who I was, to recognize my flaws and to work with them. And
Do you know in the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, when God was calling Jeremiah, Jeremiah basically said, "God, I can't talk, I can't speak, find somebody else, in my stead." And then basically God said, "No, I have picked you. I'll tell you what to say. I'm going to be with you." And so the first time I read that, that verse in the Bible, it hit home to me. I saw that Jeremiah had kind of accepted that, he's not the right person to do what God wanted. Just like I felt like, my family had created this box that I could never wiggle myself out of, right? So when I read that code, I said, I feel like I'm also in this box. I can't do this. I can't do this. I cannot live up to these other people, right? And then basically I felt God telling me, don't worry, you do what you need to do, and I'm going to put you. Basically, I'm going to lead the way.
when was that?
The first time I actually read that was my junior year in high school. I was 17.
Okay.
I was 17, which coincidentally, that's really, when things kind of started to turn around for me. So it's a really big coincidence. So at that time, as a 17-year-old kid, I said, you know what? When I have a child, I want to name them Jeremiah, for that. because, basically I want them to not, care about what other people say. There's no way you're going to please everybody. Just work hard. And if you do that, do what you're supposed to do, God is going to exalt you, because Jeremiah means God exalts. So God is going to exalt you to wherever he needs you to be. So I felt like he was talking to me at that time, and that has stuck with me today.
Talk to me a little bit about high school. You're coming from Kenya. You go to high school. You start as a junior. Is that right?
As a sophomore.
The sophomore. Now, I know that now that I taught in high school in the US, I know high school in the US can be the most vicious place to be, with the bullying, especially when you're coming from a different culture.
Yep.
The accent is funny.
Yep.
You know, walk like them. I remember we would try to behave like African Americans because we love their music, we love everything, but we can't quite fit in. We can't quite be like them. And so, how did you navigate? And you try to talk to girls, and some girls, the white girls were okay. They were looking. I mean, but the black ones, I was attracted to the black ones. They were looking at me and say, "Ooh, what kind of fool is this?" And
so it's funny you say that. My very first interaction with an African American, I was coming from one class. I needed to go to another one. I was still new, so I went to this girl, and then I said, "Hey, I'm going to this class. Can you please point me, to the right direction? Can you tell me where it is?" And then she looked at me up and down, and then she said, "What the hell are you saying, man? I cannot understand the word you're saying. Why don't you go back to Africa?" Right? And then she just walked away. Two lockers down, there was this white, gentleman, this other white kid. He comes to me and then he said, "Hey, I heard exactly what you said. I'll take you to your class." So it's actually funny because my entire high school career, I had more, I had more white friends than black friends. I was more comfortable around white friends than black friends.
right.
I remember when I was a senior, there's a black girl who came to me and asked me, "Hey, why are you so racist against your own people?" So I did not know how to take that. I'm like, should I go back and tell you exactly how I got here? All I said was, "Hey, I'm not racist. I just talk to whoever, is willing to have a conversation." It's just that very first experience I had was so bad. And, throughout my high school career, that's really what happened. I went on the football team. Obviously, they're white people, they're black people. Some of the things, some of the people who wanted to, harass or bully or, treat you like you're lesser than them, they were black. They were black, which was actually very painful. Yeah, so we went to college, and I still had that mentality, basically, still more comfortable around white people than black people. And then I met this, white guy, and then I met this black guy, who became really best friends. Like the three of us, we became, best friends. So I can say that black guy who, we talked today, he was basically the first true black friend I had.
It's funny because even for me in college, I had exactly the same experience. I wanted to fit in with my African American friends, especially as a freshman, as sophomore. But I was always being friends with the whites, the Asians, and
exactly.
Also not only that, also the professors. You have professors from China, from India, so it's like I never. The only place where I could do and then interact with blacks really was in the clubs, because in the nightclub, that was the only place where I could go. I'm like, okay, because
After I graduated, this is quite interesting. After I graduated, I was able to connect with some African American, especially like women, having conversations and whatnot. And then they would casually say, "Hey, right now you're here, but when it's time for you to get married, you're probably gonna bring a white girl." Yeah.
Okay, so time for college comes, and so why did you decide to go to Akron? Was it just so you can live the be your own man, experience, have your own experience, and then what happened?
Yeah. So I think when I went to Akron, I believe that was the first time I think that was the first time I rebelled against what dad wanted. I was 18 years old. But looking back, it needed to happen because everything that was going to happen to me in Akron, he told me. He said, when you go, you're going to have these kind of issues. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. So you should stay here. Then in my mind,
wait. Everything he told you was going to happen happened, right?
happened. Yes, yes. Everything he said was going to happen happened. So in my 18-year-old, mind, and as 18-year-olds, we know everything.
Yes,
I'm
right.
like, yeah, exactly, right? I'm like, look at this old man. He's telling me about what's going to happen when I go to college. Yeah, one of the reasons why I decided to go to Akron was that I wanted to get, away from the shadow of you. I wanted to get away from the constant judgment I always felt. I wanted to go and be my own man. I felt like moving away was going to help me do that. Now, I went to Akron. My first year, it went well. My first semester went well. And then I started not going to class. I think I only went to two classes, math and programming. But I did spend a lot of time playing video games. Video games, partying. Video games, partying. And then after 2 years, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, when Uncle Eric asks me, hey, when are you going to graduate? When dad says, hey, how long are you going to be in school? What am I going to say? So it's at that point, I learned that the freedom I wanted, I got it. But the cost of freedom is discipline.
Not to cut you off, but I remember somebody said, I remember who said it. Sometimes when you insist, God will let you have what you want,
Yep.
so that you can discover for yourself that what you want is actually not what you want, and from then you will listen. But had you not gone to Akron, probably you would be thinking right now that you missed something, that you missed on something.
Exactly. So I'm really glad that I insisted on going. I'm glad that I went there. I'm glad that I wasted money and time there, because when I came back, I actually came back even more humbler than I was.
Actually, I remember when you came back. So you come back, then we have a family meeting.
Yeah.
And then you are explaining what happened. And then you start crying. I remember my mom gives you tissue. And then I look at that. That is just laughing. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You are crying, that is laughing. And now I know I was going. He was like, I told you.
Exactly.
I don't listen. And then he said, and then I remember he said, everything that you say you went through, that's just like 1%. You didn't say the whole thing.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's funny. And the whole time I'm like, man, like I went through all of this. I'm pouring, my guts out. And this guy is laughing. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I know exactly why I came. Oh yeah. So I came under my parents and very obedient to a fault. Like I said, a lot of my friends would be like, hey, what does a 22, 23-year-old kid, what is he doing living with his parents? Little did they know that I had the freedom that they want me to have, but that freedom came at a cost. So, and then I went to school. I had my internship. So before my internship, I was working in McDonald's, making $6 an hour. And then I go to this internship where they pay me $12.75. That's more than 100% increase. I'll take that.
Right.
So, and then, things just went from there. Internship, I graduated, and then I went into my professional career. And, things could not have gone any better for me.
So I remember our uncles were always insisting on co-op, internship. make sure you get a job when you're still a student, make sure. Can you speak to that? How important was that for you?
Oh, it was very important. Even if it means that you take a whole semester off in order for you to have a co-op internship, it's worth it, you know. So there was this opportunity, basically at this company in Dayton. They came, to Rice State, UD, a couple other colleges, basically looking for interns every summer.
So what is an
So,
internship, by the way? Can you explain that as well before we move on? What is an internship?
so basically, an internship is an opportunity that a company gives students to work and apply what they're learning in school into the real life, into the real world. So that when you come outside of school, you do not just know how to solve a quadratic equation or integral, whatever, but you actually do know how to apply that to real life situations.
Right.
So I was fortunate to be picked, by this company, and I worked there as an intern for 2 years. Even when so it started during the summer, and then when it was time to go back to school, they said, "Hey, we'd like to keep you, even on a part-time basis."
So what were you doing as an intern?
I was coding. I was coding. The very first assignment that we had was to rewrite this software that was written in an older language and basically bring it up to date. So being able to start from scratch and then design and write this whole software while I'm still in school, it allowed me to connect the dots. I said, oh, so when I'm learning this in school, this is how I can apply it. So it was very crucial. And I do believe that part of my success that I've had since then stems from those 2 years that I spent there. They only picked I believe 2 or 3 software developers out of many who applied. And I remember going in, I was not very confident that I was going to get it, just because if you have 30 people, what are the chances that you'll be one of the 3 who are going to be picked, right? But then again, before I went in, to the interview, I talked to that lady who used to hype me up. So I went in feeling confident, and then the next day I think they called me and they said, "Yeah, we'd like to give you an opportunity here as an intern." So I went there, won the Intern of the Year award, and then after I graduated, I had applied at a couple places and I had 2 offers waiting for me, and I picked one of them.
Right. So how obviously the transition from school to work was smooth because of that internship that you had. So how was the transition in any case?
The transition, it was not bad. I think the biggest challenge was to figure out what to do with all this free time that I have now. Because in school, you go to school and then if you're in engineering, you know this very well. You have projects, homeworks, things that you have to do. Because as a student, I did not go to sleep until like 1. Now all of a sudden I graduated. I only have this time, during the day where I have to go to work, and then after that, what do I do? So figuring out what to do in those free times, that's really where I needed to, that's where I needed some transition guidance, I guess.
And how about the money? So you receive your first paycheck, which is probably like 10 times what you used to receive. And
yeah.
So time there is money. You need to know how to manage both of those. So how did that?
So all of a sudden, the money looks like it's a lot. So I do remember on my first paycheck, I took our family out. I think we went to a buffet restaurant, and we had dinner. Yeah, we had some food. I think it was a Chinese restaurant, if I remember correctly. But in the group of friends that I had, I was the only one who was in IT, and it was at that time where IT is starting to be a big deal. So around my peers, I did feel like a big shot in a way, which was bad because it made me do things to continue to prove that I really have a big shot, including wasting money.
Right.
There's a quote I read somewhere saying people spend the money they don't have to impress the people they don't like, doing the things they don't even like, or something like that.
Right.
So sometimes I did find myself doing things not because I want to, but because I wanted, to show that I'm a big shot.
Yeah, to impress people who don't even care in the first place.
Well, exactly. They don't even care. They don't even care. And people who want to take advantage of you, that's where they're going to start to creep in.
Right. So you got hired working as a software engineer, correct?
Yeah.
And you work your way up to become a manager software engineer, which is what you are doing right now.
Correct.
What are some of the what are some of the maybe strategies, if I may call it, or some of the attributes that you applied to be able to be regarded as, as a good associate or as a good employee to be able to climb the ladder to that level where you are right now?
So I was fortunate to, in every company I've worked in, I always had somebody who can serve as a mentor to me to help me just grow my career. It's always good, when I look at my phone and I see a former manager of mine is sending me an email or text message saying, "Hey, we have an opportunity here. Do you want it?" That, shows that, yeah, I was a good employee, but at the same time, it also shows that I had good people who helped me navigate, those uncharted water for me. In every company I've gone in, one of the things that I've noticed is I try to create a good relationship, not only with my boss, but also my boss's boss and my boss's boss's bosses. That, anytime you're talking to somebody who's like 2 or 3, levels above you, it's like your brain is being stretched to a level where it's kind of hard to understand maybe some of the things you're talking about. However, that's what forces you to learn. I was really fortunate to be in a position to have those kind of people. One of the people that I had a conversation with, and I think we had, really did have a really, big impact on me, is I saw that I was rising in my career. And remember those 2 separate worlds, those 2 separate realities I was always trying to live in. I'm like, wait a minute, growing up, this is how I was portrayed. This is how I was, the people around me made me feel. But here you have these people who are giving you, raises you did not even ask for, promotions and stuff like that. I'm like, so which part of me is really me? Am I this person here, or am I really what they're saying? That's when the imposter syndrome started to kick in. And then I had a conversation with this, executive in a company. It's a company that employs thousands of employees, and basically told me about how growing up, that person was overlooked as well. Some people had written that person off, but at some point, he figured that those were just people's opinions, and people's opinions are not the reality. So when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute, I've been there too. So these things, this world that I've been trying to figure out how to live in, let me just see how I can put it to the side and just focus on how I can grow, how I can continue to associate with the right people. People can actually help me grow. And now here I am. I'm really glad, really blessed that I came across people who helped me in my career.
Very, very well. So I'm just thinking about somebody who's going to listen to this conversation, and I hope that they will get that really having mentors is very important. Talking to people who have walked the walk and who are above and the head is good. Cultivating relationships, very important, and obviously, hard work. I mean, because that's like the basic. Because if you're not hard, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, then nobody's gonna notice you. But really, maintaining those key relationships, that looks like it's something that you that helped you to get where you are. Now you are not only a software engineer but also a leader. So what does that mean to be a leader, and what's the essence of leadership, would you say, and how are you going about that?
I am fortunate to have a great team, a team that, when we're together and we have a problem, even when the circumstances are not ideal, we are able to come together, come up with a solution and really go to battle together. So I would say that if you have a team and you're leading a team, if the team can feel like you are going, into the weeds with them, they're going to make you look good by working hard. And then also when they make you look good, make sure you remember to point out that, hey, actually this success that you're seeing is the work of the whole team. I hate, I hate talking about my accomplishments and stuff like that, which is why, one of the reasons I guess, my team likes me is that, I'm very quick to talk about the accomplishments of my team, because, my accomplishments mean nothing if my team is not doing well.
So let me ask you this. What are some of the excitements or rewarding moments that you encounter at your work?
So I work for a company, it's a data company that I work for. And, I've been here for 2 years and 2 months, 3 months maybe. And looking at the work that my team has done over the past 2 years, looking at the system that we are supporting and where it was at that time versus where it is today, that gives me a lot of excitement. I look back and, I talk to my team about this quite a lot. I said, hey, it's very easy to look at today and just look at the state that we're in today and see all the challenges that we have to meet. But let's always remember to look back where we were and appreciate, the trials and tribulations and the unfavorable circumstances we're in, we're able to pull through. Really, when I look at that, that's what gives me a sense of satisfaction.
Something else I want to talk about with you is your entrepreneurial spirit or your business spirit. I know you've always tried to do different things, and one of the things that I remember you doing, you created this website called whygetused.com. I think.
Yep.
Maybe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe that was your first stint at.
It was not my first.
Oh, that was not your first. So talk about your first, and then talk about one as well.
My first one was when I was working at the internship. So after we did that project, basically we took this old software and then we created, basically we made it new again. We rewrote it. All of a sudden, I feel like I can design and implement any type of software. So what I did, I wrote a phone book program, burnt it on a bunch of CDs. I went to buy paper, and then I wrote an email to a bunch of companies and said, hey, look at this software that I wrote. If you want any type of software, let me know. I'll build it for you and you pay me. That was my internship. So that was back in 2005 or 2006, one of those, So literally, like, I'll just knock on doors, like, here. You know how many people call me back? Nobody called me. Now, right now, I look at myself, like I look at, back at that time and look at the things that I knew. And then I look at myself right now. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, you write one app and all of a sudden you think you're a big shot, right? So it really started then. And then with Why Get Used, so that was me and then a couple of friends of mine. Basically, the idea was, when you go to school, to college, and you buy books, you're going to buy a book for $300. And then when you sell it back, they give you $20. but then they're going to sell it for, $200. And then when the student takes it back, now they're going to give them $10. And then the university is not going to sell it back for another $200.
Right.
And then we said, wait a minute, these people are using students. What about we create a website called Why Get Used? So that's really where the idea came from. Basically, the idea was, instead of you selling your books back to your school, sell them here. You're going to make more money than what the school is going to give you. And the person who's going to buy it is going to pay less than what they would pay at the bookstore. So that was really the idea.
So how did the business go?
Not far. Again, I think, it was, we were trying to do everything by ourselves. We did not know that when you have a good idea, you actually do need mentors who can help you, navigate the space. You need people, who can help you have investors. The code that we were writing, it was not efficient simply because, we're still new into the field. We're essentially still learning how to write good software. But I remember, we had, a couple hundred students already on it, and they had already started to post their books.
And I know you also didn't you try to write some software for Dad's business when he was working?
Oh, so I actually did, and he actually used it. He used it, it helped him run his business. I forgot what I called it, but my intention was for him to use it and then see if I can sell it to other people. Again, I was a one-man team trying to do everything by myself, which just never worked. The spirit still there, the desire still there, and at some point something will happen.
And if I remember correctly, haven't you tried to do a partnership with one guy in Africa regarding the same kind of?
Yeah, we did it. A friend of ours from my childhood, and basically, I was kind of looking at what we have in America, and then what we have in Africa. So I said, you know what? If I can come up with an idea that we can basically, apply there to help some people at least move ahead a few decades, that would be a big win. So the challenge that we saw with that is that it was hard. It was hard for us to communicate to people there about what we're trying to do. Like they're just not aware of the world that we live in today. It's like I saw this drawing one day. These people are basically pushing rocks on a cart, and the cart has square wheels. So basically, they're just pushing, and then this other guy comes with round wheels, and then say, "Hey guys, here." And then the guys who are pushing the car, they say, "Hey, shut up, we're busy," right? Basically, you're so busy doing what you're used to doing that you have no clue what these other new things is going to do for you.
That is a problem that a lot of young entrepreneurs in Africa are having. Sometimes I chat with some of them with innovative ideas. They come up with innovative ideas, technology-based programs, and then they go to a business person who is running a business and say, "We can create a program that can do this for you."
And they're clueless about it.
And then the guy will say, okay, so how much do I have to pay for that? As soon as they tell them the price, I was like, am I gonna pay that for? Because he doesn't understand what it is. Because doing business the old-fashioned way, and it's been working for him. I mean, you're pushing this wheelbarrow with square wheels. It's moving from point A to point B, and you've been doing it for decades. It works for you. And some crazy guy who has never pushed a wheelbarrow in his life is gonna come and tell you, actually, you can replace the wheel and use. What do you know?
Exactly. So that is one side. So on the other hand, like if you go into the government sector in Africa, I was talking to a gentleman who was saying that there are people who can come and write software to automate and just digitize and computerize a lot of the things that we do manually. However, we have governments that are so reliant on people taking bribes in such a way that if you're in a position where you get some kickbacks, some bribes, Now, if somebody is going to put, a software that's going to help things run smoothly, and it's going to make it difficult for you to take those bribes, then there is no incentive for you to take that kind of software. Absolutely no incentive.
Yes, so that's very common. Let's say there is a project that I have. Let's say there's a project that I have. I will charge you only $1 million US to implement it, to run it, and it will work smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody comes and say, mine costs $5 million. It will not even do half of what I'm trying to do, but wants you to pay him $5 million. Out of those $5 million that he will give you one will be yours.
Yeah.
And then you will end up paying that person. That person will deliver something with a zero quality.
Yeah.
And of course, that money is coming from the taxes of the people.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
And that's very common.
It's very unfortunate that there are a lot of bright African minds outside of Africa. That if Africa really wanted to take advantage of these great minds, I mean, from engineers to teachers to doctors, I mean, in every industry, Africa will be so far ahead, nobody's going to catch up.
No, yesterday I was having a conversation with our uncle Leonard. He told me something very, very interesting. He told me how when he went to Canada, he saw what was going on there. He was on fire. It was like, when I return back home, I am going to change this. Yeah. Then I'm like, okay, how did that work for you? He was like, oh boy. So basically he told me, when you come back, there are only two choices. There is no third one. It's only two choices. Either you become corrupt like them, or you flee.
That is a very sad world to live in, isn't it?
Or you just disappear. You go back. And then he told me, basically, I mean, he was like running into trouble everywhere. Because if you try to bring integrity in a system, you're gonna get in trouble, not just by some little guy, but the minister himself.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was.
There are people who are benefiting from that. Yeah, there are people who are benefiting.
He went, there was some shady corruption going on. He would try to rectify it. They said, this guy is too hard to handle. Move him to another department. They move him to another department, the same thing happens. And then it was like, you know what? I may as well lose my life here. And this is something that is very, very, very common in so many places.
That's why if you are going to be a leader and you're not a servant leader, basically meaning you're not there just for yourself, but you are there basically to make life better for the people who depend on you to make the right decisions. Until we get there, these things are going to continue happening. We're going to continue to have a lot of great minds that come to America, that go to Europe to learn, to study, and then they seek citizenship there and never even go back.
Right.
But unless they create an environment where people can actually come back and try to try out the ideas without fear of retribution, without fear of somebody coming and start to try to take what's yours, we're always going to be in that cycle.
Yeah. Now, a little disclaimer. So we also have to be careful not to throw a blanket on all of Africa and say, okay, it's like this. There are obviously places that are going well, that are doing well. And there are some people who were able to actually relocate and move from the West and go back to Africa, and then they try things and things work. So you also tried something called, is it Perk Front or?
Perk Front.
Yes.
So these started when our kids were starting to go to daycare, and we saw how expensive daycare was. And then I started asking myself if there are companies that do provide some type of benefits where they can help pay for some of your daycare expenses and stuff like that. And that was the light bulb. Basically, a perk is those extra things that the company provides. So basically, I created a platform basically to say, a company comes in, they say all the benefits that they offer. And then people who are looking for jobs, basically you'll be able to say, all right, I'm looking for this job, but these are the things I care about. I want somebody, I want a company that has a health and wellness program. I want a company that has, that pays for, part of the daycare expenses, stuff like that. So I started that. And then, again, not having money and really the, people to help shape the vision, be able to sell something to investors, that was another hindrance.
So it looks like, you are the brain behind the idea, but you need arms. And,
yeah.
And the arms, sometimes they come in form of somebody willing to finance, somebody who believes in the idea, who's willing to finance. Yeah. So definitely there's a need for team.
Oh yeah, for sure. Having an idea is one thing, but if you cannot, have those other people to help you put it into action, then it's as good as dead. Which is a lesson that I keep learning every time, which kind of goes back to my position as a manager. It does not matter how great of a system you want to design. If you do not have the right team that's motivated to help you go through the trenches and do those things, it's not going to matter.
So now that it looks like you have this pattern of trying things and trying things and trying things, what are you trying now? Or what are you going to try tomorrow? Do you have any?
You know what? Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I always tell people, keep dreaming until people start to think you're crazy. If people do not think you're crazy, you're not dreaming big enough. I mean, I was talking to another gentleman. I told him, I said, this world has enough people who are comfortable at being average. They do not need company, right? Shoot for the moon. Something's going to happen at some point.